invincible. It was this badge of honor and something that I was proud of, because I would go 110 miles an hour when I got to work, and then I came home, took care of my husband and baby at that same pace. But it had to change after my daughter was born. Most nights, unfortunately, I would get into bed and I'd give my husband that horrible pet kiss, and I would say, honey, I am sorry, but thank goodness you can't die from sex deprivation or you'd be a goner. And he would respond, heh heh. So to put in a nutshell, I had absolutely no balance. My life had no balance. And I thought that I could be some kind of superwoman, super mom. And I learned the hard way, there's no such thing. So tonight we're going to talk about what it's like to have a life of balance. A life of balance with your career, with romance, with your friends, and much more. And I want to show you how important it is to find that balance in your life by these 7 steps. And then we're going to invite the expert panel who contributed to my book and was profound in many ways on how we pass this balance down to our children. So as adults, you have to take responsibility for your own balance. No one's going to hand it to you on a silver platter. No judgment here, ladies. I do occasionally get the Botox, but I knew it wasn't this that needed to change. I had to change inside. And so if you've gotten used to living out of balance, because you really don't know what balance feels like, you try to cope with anxiety, you deal with the fear of not living up to your own expectations or maybe someone else's. You eke out this grumpy, short-tempered, less loving life, less joyful, and you may have even been diagnosed with depression. So I've mentioned balance now a few times, and you're probably thinking, okay, well, what is balance, Michelle? Tell me what it is. And I'm not going to give you the dictionary definition. I want to show you what she looks like. It is a woman who isn't pressuring herself to be superwoman. It's a woman who actually has enough energy to get through the day. Not halfway through the day, through the day. A woman who is happy and joyful and sees the beauty in her relationships. And most importantly, a woman who is confident with her decisions as a mother and a wife. So people have asked me quite a bit since this book has come out. They said, Michelle, what does balance feel like to you? You know, it's interesting you wrote this book on balance. And I said, I say this to women because of course women get it right away. To me, balance is like that first sip of your cup of coffee in the morning when the kids aren't up and the house is silent, and just that euphoria of enjoying a perfect cup of coffee. Or that first 5 minutes of a massage where the masseuse puts their hand on you and you realize, oh, I needed this so bad. My body, my soul really needed this. That euphoria you feel is what balance should feel like. And once you start feeling balance, you will crave it, and your old life will not be acceptable. So how do we get to this place? Let's start with these steps. Step number 1, we are going to kick the super mom myth to the curb and learn to be good enough moms. So superwoman and supermom is just another way of saying perfectionism, isn't it? The definition is impossible for humans to achieve, yet it's hailed as this holy grail in our quest to be perfect moms. And so, as I was preparing this book, of course, reading stacks and stacks of articles of spouting how women can become superwoman. And then you become a mom, and then all of a sudden you're supposed to be supermom. And sadly, the notion that women can become supermom, what does it lead to? It leads to devastating results. It leads to guilt, self-judgment, depression, frustration, and comparison. So we've been brainwashed to believe that we can be perfect. Perfect employees, perfect mothers, perfect spouse. So who here suffers from this supermom syndrome? Anybody? Yeah, just a few. Thank you for admitting that. On the first page of my book, I wrote all the titles that didn't make the cover. And one of them that consistently kept coming up, but my PR team and my publisher squished it pretty fast. And it was Superwoman Can Suck It. And I truly was livid that the media had gotten away with making it look so easy. How could we as a society of women believe that we needed to live up to the super mom expectation? And we definitely don't see all these articles on dads and super dad, Superman. So I'm going to share with you the secret. And this is the secret that freed me from guilt, which I suffered greatly from. Constantly felt guilt. And I think guilt, now that I know the secret, it's horrible. I hate the word guilt. But my secret was I had to learn to be a good enough mom. So good enough mom, does that sound horrible to you? Like an awful compromise? And are you secretly judging me right now? Well, if you are, knock it off. Let me explain this whole concept. So the good enough mother concept was derived by a pediatrician named Donald Winnicott in 1953. And I'm going to read this exact. So the good doctor agreed that mothers must fully adapt to their infant's needs since the infant is incapable of doing anything for themselves. Makes sense? But as time goes on, he discovers that mothers should adapt less and less. This prepares the child for the reality of life, that they can't get every single thing they want at every single moment. And it also allows the child to grow to mature and to become independent, all of which are necessary to be a successful, balanced individual. So when I first heard this good enough mothering concept and was deep into therapy, I was afraid. I was afraid of not killing myself. I was afraid that maybe I was selfish. I was afraid that maybe I was a lousy mom. I was afraid maybe I didn't love my children as much as someone else. Because remember, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be the perfect mom, the perfect wife. That was what I was trying to achieve. But being good enough does not mean you're going to love your children any less. Not at all. What it means is you're willing to set priorities and boundaries that allow you to care for yourself so that you can give your children even more. So how does this good enough mothering concept work? And I'll give you two examples, which when you marinate on this actually for a period of time, the super mom versus the good enough mom concept, you will notice throughout your week how many examples actually really start coming to the forefront of your mind. But example number one, Halloween rolls around. You typically make the beautiful Halloween homemade costume. This year, your schedule's out of control. It just happens to be you're really busy at this time. You go into Costco, and there's the $29.99 costume your daughter loves. Right away, you feel this guilt. How can my daughter wear the costume from Costco? Everybody else is going to have the costume. Your daughter's happy. Your schedule's going to be happy. The costume's good enough. It's okay that you don't make the homemade costume this year. It's not the end of the world. It's not worth feeling guilt over. Number two, another example, which I suffered greatly from, the working mom syndrome. Constantly felt the guilt. And I realized the guilt was not going to pay my salary to stay home. And so after a while, I realized, okay, I can't stay home. I can't change my situation to stay home. Therefore, I need to find other ways to contribute to the class, to contribute to the school, so that I feel like I am good enough. And the aha moment really came is when I realized guilt and self-judgment would never solve my problems. And if you think about that, every time you start to feel guilt, is this going to change my scenario? Because really, guilt and self-judgment just bring women continued agony over, and this is what I heard over and over again when I was writing this book and interviewing women. If you can't change your situation, you need to stop feeling guilty and learn to be more compassionate with yourself. So in short, we can't be superwoman. We're on the same page with that? Because remember, she's got the teeny tiny waist, the long legs, she wears that spandex. And I think she wears a cape to bedroom, which I'm definitely not doing, Jerry. So we're going to learn to be good enough moms, and I really think it's going to change your life. Step number 2, and this one's a touchy one. We are going to eliminate toxic friends from our life. This really hit a chord in the media when I wrote this book, and that was my intent. I know how challenging this is for women, but we should not allow toxic friends in our life. They are as bad as nuclear waste. Psychologist Clinton McLemore states, quote, "A toxic relationship is someone who continually throws you curves, keeps you off balance, raises your anxiety for no apparent reason, and the key is leaves you feeling badly about yourself." So you don't have to raise your hands, but does anyone here have a relative or a friend who does this to you? The ones that you put up with, even though they find every way to disparage your choices. They frequently say, "I'm just being helpful," or "I'm just being honest." The ones who leave you feeling down and doubting yourself as a mother, as a wife. So I have always loved being a girl's girl. A lot of you know me. I love having my girlfriends, and today I have the most amazing group of girlfriends that are priceless to me, but it was not always like that. I allowed toxic friends to remain in my life way too long. And I recognized they were altering my balance. So what do you do with these toxic friends? Because obviously this is challenging. Number 1, if you want to save that relationship, you need to have the strength to sit down with them and have that conversation. Number 2, if it doesn't work, you end the relationship. I had to do this. I had to have a talk with start to notice this kind of peace and balance in your life you never had before. And this consists of women that are non-judgmental listeners, supporting and even love your children. Not your husband, your children. Self-actualized women will naturally be proud of you. Remember that. They will be proud of you, and they will want to share in your joys as much as your setbacks. They will go out of their way to be there for you. The truth is, you don't let anybody treat you badly over and over and over again. It's not acceptable. So I challenge you tonight to find your true sisters versus your toxic friends. Step number 3, create the team with family and friends. So I grew up in this amazing family. My mom's here tonight, the beautiful blonde in the back. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom who handled the home every day with grace and ease. But I was not immune from chores on Saturday. My sisters and I, remember record players? I'm embarrassed to even say that. Record players, we would crank Olivia Newton-John. Remember Xanadu and You're the One That I Want? So I would clean toilets to that, and then off we got to go to my grandparents every weekend. My whole family went, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. Every weekend I spent on my grandparents' ranch. Growing up in this old school Portuguese family, what did I witness? I witnessed the women inside and the men outside. That's what I witnessed every day. And these very traditional roles, of course, I place those, fast forward, into my marriage today. So when I married Jared, I was doing the household work, the grocery shopping, the cooking, the laundry. We had our first baby. I was taking care of the baby. Oh, and I was still a partner of a firm, working full-time. So I was exhausted. I was at the breaking point of my marriage. I didn't even know really what was going on, but I was just exhausted. Looking back, there was really nothing traumatic going on. I was exhausted. And so I went to go see a counselor. Thankfully, Jared was up for that. And you know how they take like 2 or 3 meetings where they just ask you a gazillion questions. And so finally, at one point, the counselor looks at me and she straight on, and I knew I was going to get it at this point. She was not looking at Jared, and she said, "Why aren't you asking Jared for help?" And right away, of course, financial planner in me, I'm thinking, lady, this is crazy. I'm paying you $200 an hour, and you're telling me I got to ask him for help? So I was not very happy. I kind of thought she was crazy. But of course, I wasn't going to act out because I didn't want her to think I was the crazy one. So I shut my mouth, and I went home, and the great experiment of our marriage began. The repetitive complaining stopped, and dividing of a few household duties began. So for example, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays in my house, I work insane hours so that I could try to be home with the girls on Thursdays, Fridays, work in their class, just be there with them, do play dates, all that fun stuff. So Jared was gonna start doing grocery shopping and cook dinner, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. Right now, you're all thinking, okay, Michelle, what are you complaining about? This is great. But you have to understand, I struggle. There were so many times I wanted to jump up and change the dinner menu, change the plans, or just do it because those were my feminine duties. Those were my traditional roles as a woman. Because remember, I was trying to be super mom. I was trying to be super wife. However, my plate was full and I was exhausted. And this therapist, brilliant as she was, because the joke was on me, she wanted me to feel what it was like to be cared for in a non-traditional way. So I looked forward to coming home as the months went on. These silly little dividing of household tasks really changed our marriage. And I was excited to come home. I was more relaxed, definitely had more energy in the bedroom, which he was ecstatic about. So I understand and recognize when I wrote this book, we all have different marriages, different relationships. Every single one of us do. But I know for sure we don't have the 1950s traditional relationships anymore. And so if you need help, you've got to drop that silly conditioning, again, back to that superwoman myth of what a men's role is and what a woman's role is, and ask for help. And even if you're a stay-at-home mom, great study came out in Forbes in 2011, why stay-at-home moms should earn $115,000 a year. A typical mom, this is gonna make you guys all vomit, 97 hours a week you work. It includes 13.2 as a daycare teacher, 3.9 household CEO, 7.6 psychologist, 14 as a chef, 22 doing household laundry. I could go on and on, but you get the point. So how do we ask our husbands for help? Men are wonderful creatures. I'll just start with that for the few that are in here. But we need to be very specific with men. So this whole thing about repetitive complaining, women, we all love to do it. I need help around the house, I'm so tired. That doesn't cut it. And we have got to be specific. Honey, fold the laundry while you're watching the game. Be very specific. And one caveat, don't micromanage the poor guy. This has taken me tons of practice, and literally I understand we all have our standards of how we want our laundry folded, how we want our dinner cooked, but if you're going to ask for help, you've got to then zip it. And literally, I'm still working on this today. Jared's gonna laugh because a few weeks ago I come home, he's making sloppy joes. So, my mom's gonna laugh because my dad made me eat sloppy joes. He brought them out my mom made him for dinner. I didn't eat them back when I was 10. He saved it and made me eat it for breakfast. So still to this day, I'd rather die. So I walk in, he's making sloppy joes. The girls are happy, they're doing their homework, they're excited to eat sloppy joes. Jared's happy, music's on, everything's great. I come in, oh, why are you making sloppy joes? Oh my gosh, why? Just lay into him. He doesn't say a word. And then I catch myself, he's brilliant, doesn't say a word. I zip it and think, why am I complaining about this? The kids are happy, he's happy, I can eat something else. So, for my single friends in the room that do not have the help from a husband, if you can't afford childcare and household help, terrific. Don't think for a moment you're not worth it. If you can't afford it, then ask a friend, can we swap kids once a week or once a month? I need to run some errands. Help, honestly, is not a bad word. And again, it has, with the supermom myth, with the superwoman thing, it's become a bad word for us. So let's see where we're at so far in finding balance. We're gonna kick superwoman, supermom syndrome to the curb, and we're gonna learn to be good enough moms. We're gonna get rid of toxic relationships and surround us surround ourselves with people who truly support us. And we're going to ask for help if you need it. If you don't need it, don't ask, but I need it. Step number 4, and I might sound like a flight attendant, but when traveling through life with children, you need to put on your oxygen mask first. So I grew up in a beautiful town called Las Banas in the Central Valley, and lived out in the country, and boy, we were creative with all the ways we would let off steam. One of the ways is I jogged down the canal bank with my pig every night. Yes, I said pig. So I showed pigs in the local 4-H club, and one of my favorite pigs, original name, I named him Wilbur, is he helped me find balance and tranquility as a young girl. I had to care for him every day. My dad was not going to do it. I couldn't even talk my sisters into doing it. I had to go out there to that barn and take care of him. Some nights I'd huff and puff the whole way down there, but I had to take care of him. Most nights, though, it was a phenomenal release of stress. I struggled with central auditory, and so I really needed that release when I got home. I would lay this clean bed of straw and just relax with my pig, and then we'd go for a run down the canal bank. Sounds normal, right? I had no idea, though, that spending time with my pig Wilbur would translate to balance and tranquility. And as the years went on and I went off to college and moved up to the Bay Area, I longed for those precious moments of Wilbur time. And I call them me time now. There are days today my delicate balance clearly is off. I do not have 100% of balance 100% of the time. I am constantly recalibrating my tips so that I can have balance. For me, though, I feel like I'm suffocating, I'm losing control when I don't have balance. And I make all the excuses, as I'm sure you do, because I hear them from you all. No time, the kids need me, I can't, it's selfish, it can wait, it's not important, the me time's not important. And it is important, I can't even express how important it is to you to find that me time. Today, I take long walks with my lab. I mosey on down to Julie Clary's, which I did last week, and we went actually and sat in the backyard with her pig and giggled a bit. It doesn't matter, I don't care what your me time is, and you don't have to justify what your me time is. You deserve the me time, and you've got to stop believing that the me time is self-centered in a negative way. So let's take the self-centered term from a negative to a positive and redefine it and really become centered with ourselves. So step number 5, the juicy chapter, keeping the romance alive. So before soccer and diapers took over our lives, do you guys actually remember what it was like to have romance and sex as spontaneous and worry-free? For me, it was like juggling work, household duties, and a new baby was like translating 5 languages at once. I mean, it was crazy. And even though I loved my husband, and he was the center of my life, he was the easiest thing to throw on the back burner. And as that happened, we lost that romance. We lost the spark. It wasn't fair to our marriage, and it wasn't fair to our relationship. And so in the book, I do this Q&A with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Nana Rowe, who's a clinical psychologist and sex therapist. And I've gone on many girls' weekends away with her, and she's mentored me over the last 2 decades. But I just want to share something that really moved me. When I was doing hours of interviews with her, I asked her, why do couples lose the spark in a relationship? Very simple question, right? And here was her response, quote, "This happens in the best of marriages. A simple example is the person you were sleeping with, who is your romantic ideal, suddenly becomes the guy who wakes up with bad breath, has food in his teeth, conveniently leaves his underwear on the floor. By the same token, that sexy image you used to have of you gets altered by the daily sight of you in baggy sweats. Or when you try to hold a conversation as he sits on the toilet." That reminds me of This Is 40, that movie. "While all these behaviors breed a certain kind of intimacy, comfort, and closeness, they are anything but erotic and certainly not exciting. So ironically, the comfort that we seek in our relationships is exactly what decreases the spark. Brilliant. So I love her advice. Her advice is profound and great. And throughout my discussions with her, though, she kept coming back to 4 things that create a romantic, balanced life. 4 things: communication, spontaneity, appreciation, and acknowledgement. She just kept coming back to them. And I even said, really, the acknowledgement thing? Really, the appreciation? She kept coming back to it. So communication, spontaneity, appreciation, acknowledgement. So I know you guys would much rather I stay on this, but I am going to talk about finances. Number 6, staying financially fit. There was no way I was going to write this book without including how important it is to be financially balanced. I have 2 passions that are pretty extreme in my life, excluding my kids and my husband: finances and accessories. And this love affair started at a very young age. I was proud to say my first tote was at the age of 5. Although it wasn't a designer bag, it was my dad's banking bag, because he owned Western stores. And so it had this prestigious label saying Bank of America across it. And I thought I was so cool. I filled it with a calculator, a dollar of change, an old checkbook. And my mom was so patient, because as my brother and sister were out in the back playing behind our businesses, she set up out of a cardboard box this desk for me. And I would sit there and calculate for hours while she did the books for our business. And she just let me sit right next to her. So no surprise I became a financial advisor today and have such a passion for numbers. And when I was writing this chapter, and Natalie, sorry, I got to show this, but Natalie was so gracious and read every chapter after I wrote it. She got to the finance chapter and she called me and she goes, "You got to spice that up." And I said, "What do you want me to do? Add some sex quotes from the prior chapter?" She said, "I don't know what you got to do, but you got to do something." So the reality is, I understand, and I say this over and over again in my office, I understand that finances are not sexy, it's not appealing. I understand that. But women, we need to be financially empowered. I'm going to share with you some crazy stats, and maybe this will motivate you. Over the next decade, did you know that women will control the wealth in the U.S.? They will control it. 80 to 90% of you in this room will solely be responsible for your finances due to divorce or the death of your husband. And here's the sad one. Fewer than 2 in 10 women feel very prepared to make wise financial decisions. That kills me. So it is not uncommon, and I understand it, I see it day in and day out, where women delegate this to their husbands. Their husbands are gifted, they love finances, so they say, "Honey, you do the finances, great." But I want you to understand fiscally what is going on under your roof, even if your husband is handling all of the finances. So I have 3 simple tips for you to gain some balance. If you walk out of here today, these are the things I want you to marinate on. Number 1, you need to understand what is going in and what is going out every single month. Do you know that most families spend every single penny that comes in, and a whopping 85% of the purchases are made by women. 85% are made by us, and we have no clue what we're spending it on. So if you get nothing else, put a microscope under your spending habits. It's the financial empowerment that you really deserve. Number 2, have a clear financial plan. You should have a clear idea of how much is going into savings, how much is going into retirement, how much is going into your college planning, how much goes into your vacation fund. Don't leave that up to your husband. You should be knowledgeable on this. Sit down with him and make sure you understand what those goals look like. And I have so many women who their husbands just come to the meetings to see me, and it kills me. I'm like, "Where's Sue? Where's Jane?" "Oh, she didn't want to come." If you don't come to the meetings with your husband, to the financial advisor, to the CPA, to the accountant, I know it's not fun, I know it's not sexy, but it's financial empowerment, because remember that stat, you will be managing your money at some point. And the final one, organize all your financial estate and personal affairs in one location. So consistently, I would ask clients in my office, if something happened to you and your husband today, do you have everything in one location? Do you have all your assets, all your liabilities, your insurance, where the kids should go, where all your money's hidden in your house, if you have any money hidden, where's the safe deposit box? And literally, I would get the deer in the headlights look over and over again. So my OCD went on overdrive, and I created the everything binder, which has 17 tabs, and literally all you have to do is fill it out. It is one location where everything is for your family. So again, are we going to delegate this to your spouse? No, I want you as a woman to be financially empowered, which ultimately will translate to balance. You'll sleep better at night, trust me, with knowing that you have this under control. So in conclusion, all of these steps I'm talking about, they take time. They're not fun, and I won't whitewash the process. You might have to backpedal a bit, hit the reset button. You may feel phony. It may look phony to your friends. You know, what are you trying to do with this balance thing? You will not drop perfectionism and accept that being a good enough mother is really better for you in an instant time. You won't be able to handle toxic relationships overnight. They will require some serious soul searching. You won't get your kids and husband to take over household duties without some grumble. And you won't have that romantic spark back overnight. So know that it's going to take some time. The final step, and probably the most important one, is passing this balance on to our children. So I used to come home, before I really found this magical recipe for me, I would come home frazzled, off kilter, and my kids right away, they turned from the happy kids to where they would whine, they'd cry, they were agitated, and it was obvious. And after all, our kids, you know, we are their most important role models, so they were doing exactly what I was doing when I got home. I was tired, I was frustrated. And Dr. Oz makes this great point. He says, children are going to treat themselves the way you treat yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, when they become your age, they will do exactly the same thing you were doing. Pretty powerful. And you know, we all grew up, I think most of us in this room, did not grow up with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, I'm trying to think of all, Pinterest. You know, we are living in a completely different generation now. So how do we pass down this balance to our kids? We used to have, do you remember those phones that were actually on the wall? And we had this big yellow phone, and it was called Big Yellow. And my dad would set the timer for 7 whole minutes. Thankfully, my mom got this long cord, so my sisters and I could squeeze this long cord in the garage. And we got 7 whole minutes to talk to our friend, our boyfriends. I mean, that's it, 7. And I think now, wow, what a difference. 20 years maybe, 30, 40, whatever that was. Life is just very different. It's a whole new ballgame. And so kids are faced with more and more challenges, more and more dangers with the immediacy of the digital world. It's our job, though, remember, to create those boundaries. So I want to ask the panel to come up because I'm so excited to share with you Pat Hansen, Vista Grande School Principal, who's worked with kids for over 44 years, Jill Forschler, who is our school psychologist, Linda Turnbull, who is the Executive Director of Teen Esteem, a nonprofit, wonderful organization, and then Nicole, who I love this girl. I got to hear her speak at Cal High a few weeks ago at a Teen Esteem event, and she just blew me away. She's just gonna probably shock you guys with what she says and what it's like to be a teenager today. So I'm gonna invite the crew up and start with Nicole, if you're ready. And then thank you.